Right. So yeah, today I'm Phil Martin. I'm from the University of York. I work mainly as a learning designer and program leader and teacher. So I have several hats I wear, but my main background is in learning design. So I was really interested to learn about AI imagery. I'll come on to that in a minute, but I just wanted to lay out the sort of format here. I've got about I'm hopefully only going to be talking for about 15 minutes or so. I'm just going to keep a clock right here so I don't ramble on too much. But I thought the best way of doing this would be to kind of open up the floor to questions and have the workshop element where hopefully people can like have a play around with some of these image generators and see what you can create that you might be able to use in your own teaching. But I'll kind of combine those sections together. So we'll have a bit of a free flowing Q&A and mess around with the technology if that's okay. I've not this was originally designed for a kind of computer lab workshop where everyone kind of sits together and looks over each other's shoulders. It's very hard to recreate online. So we'll try it this way and see how it goes. Yeah, so I think most of the conversations around AI so far have been around large language models, and we've looked at text to text. And what I really found interesting was about the same time I've been following the text to music, text to audio. If anyone's been listening to that as well, the AI generated media outside of ChatGPT and things like that. And images I just thought were really interesting because as a learning designer, I use images a lot in my teaching materials. So I've been working with e-learning materials specifically for the last few years and how to make them engaging. So I've got a little triangle here on the left. It kind of represents how we think about any kind of new technology like this. So I just want to frame anything I talk about here with these 3 points in mind. So it's always to think about your learning context. So my language teacher in my sort of trained background, but I work a lot with subject matter experts from a range of disciplines. So I'm hoping like that you can think about your own learning context in this and really transfer what I'm saying to your own domain. We've got the new technology, these fancy things, these images that we can now generate just from text-based prompts. But the big thing that I wanted to just flag here is that little white bit in the triangle, which is design principles. And these are things like universal design for learning and principles that are outlined in books like Clark and Mayer. This is my go-to book really for anything to guide my use of technology in learning. And they really talk about how the mind works and how we learn and how technology can benefit the learning process. So with imagery, we know kind of from various cognitive sciences and psychological research that words and images facilitate learning better than words alone. So a judicious use of images really kind of helps learners absorb concepts that we're teaching better than simply reading, for example, text on a PowerPoint. They help us to visualize abstract concepts. So we think better as learners when we have something concrete and something relatable to hang the learning on. This helps us kind of integrate the new knowledge that we're learning into our existing knowledge base. And the interesting thing about this is that although we've used images for a long time, and I've been using images for a while, and I work with vector images a lot in libraries, the interesting thing now is that students can now use artificial intelligence to do this for themselves. So I'm going to introduce you to a few platforms in a minute, but first I'm going to go through some examples of things that I've created for my own classes with my learning design hat on. So this is an image that I created on Midjourney. So I'll talk about the platforms that are available in a minute, but Midjourney is it's a subscription only one, and you type your prompt in. You tend to use more templated prompts, but it spits out 4 suggested images. So what I was trying to create here was an example of the research journey. So I teach on a research skills module, and I talk to my students about how we often refer to research as unexplored territory, following in other researchers' footsteps. You could branch into different metaphors like standing on the shoulders of giants. This particular image base was they're all very similar. So it produced 4 kind of slight variations for the same theme, and you can then choose which one of those you want to rework or upscale. Quick points note here, I had in a previous workshop I did on this, someone has pointed out that about the biases in AI image generators. Yes, they are there, and yes, these are all white men. Just to flag here, though, it did actually give us another set. It seems to give a fairly even balance between the genders of the thing it suggested. So this was just the one I selected. So apologies for this. All sort of misogyny is mine on this. But that's the research journey. That's how we could visually represent it. This was Midjourney's interpretation of my prompt to visualize an argument as a building. So we talk a lot about arguments in academic circles as being like buildings. They might have weak foundations, they're unstable arguments, or they're unsupported, and we get things that just arguments that don't stand up, they crumble. On the other hand, we really want to teach students to lay solid foundations for arguments and plan a lot of things, think things through. So in these images, the foundations could be the solid reading before you start to develop your own arguments. So there are slightly different styles for Midjourney here. The research journey was the graphic novel style. And you can dictate which ones you want. This was photorealistic. This one was, I asked it to do an infographic. I wanted to do the island of research, which is something that I usually talk to my students about. Again, mapped onto this kind of journey metaphor. So a quick point to note here that you can see little text bubbles here because I was trying to create an infographic. If you zoom in on these, I think it's too small to see here, but that text is just gobbledygook. The reason for that is that a lot of image generators still aren't very good at creating text. So if you wanted to create a flyer, for example, for your teaching materials, and say, please put this phrase across the front, a lot of them still struggle with this. I am told that a lot of them, the tech changes so quickly. Apparently Midjourney version 6 is now good at this. I haven't checked it out though. I've had some feedback saying there are packages that will do it. So this is good text, readable text is in the pipeline, with accessibility. This is if you're interested, this is, you can also do wood carvings. This is my attempt at, I wanted to convey the concept of overcoming obstacles in your research process, but it's come out very Old Testament for some reason. So I'll come back to this in a minute, but you really have to work with your prompts to get the things that you want. So what's available to us? So I'm just going to highlight 3 platforms here. I've mentioned Midjourney. So Midjourney is, I started with this, but I don't recommend others do. Midjourney, you have to pay for it. It's about, I think it was about $10 a month or something. And it definitely has a steep learning curve. It's really good at photorealistic images, and it's very good at people. But you need like syntactic chains and quite strict templates. So there's kind of a community of Midjourney users. It's really interesting once you get into it, but probably not the best to start with. Stable Diffusion is one that's open source. And by the way, I'll link to all the resources here. So I've got a Padlet link at the end if you want to come back to any of these. So don't worry about taking notes for now. It is quite slow. So when we're using it in class, if you're getting students to generate their images, it's probably not one to start with because it takes maybe 2 or 3 minutes to generate each image. The one I've been using is DALL-E, which is now available via Bing. So Microsoft, when they bought OpenAI, embedded DALL-E into their Bing chat. So you can generate images through DALL-E via Bing. Or if you've got a ChatGPT 4 subscription, it's also embedded there, and it works fantastically with as just integrated into ChatGPT, so you can be chatting away to ChatGPT about something and say, oh, can you create me an image of that? And it will use DALL-E to do one quite quickly. So those were, this is me with my learning design eyes, thinking about, I'm using images in my materials to kind of facilitate learning a little bit more and illustrate concepts that I'm trying to teach. So the other branch of things that I've been playing around with is getting students to generate their own images in class. So I'll talk a little bit more about how I made this slightly more relevant to the things I'm teaching, but as an introductory activity, and just to get them used to working with prompts, I created a little kind of silly thing to do with movies. So what I asked students to do was open their devices in class. We had about, this was a non-credit bearing class of about 16 students. It was language support, so that it was a fairly relaxed atmosphere. And they were sitting there with the devices, and I directed them to Stable Diffusion. And I said, describe in your groups a key scene from your favorite film and try and recreate it using one of the platforms. So this was my attempt. I probably won't discern this, but I was trying to do the Shawshank Redemption. If anyone's seen the bit from the film where Tim Robbins has just escaped and he's out of prison, and he's got his hands with the prompt that I used was generate an image of a man standing in the rain at night with arms outstretched to the sky with an expression of joyous relief. That was my prompt. And the image on the left is what Stable Diffusion came up with, and the image on the right was Dali's effort. So you can see the thing that this exercise illustrates, I mean, it's a bit of silly fun, but what it shows you is that your first prompt is unlikely to get you what you want. So if anyone's familiar with the scene that I'm talking about, I think it was the poster for the movie, this looks nothing like that. The time periods are wrong. Stable Diffusion has inserted cars. The clothing is too modern. Dali's added a street that I didn't ask for. There are strange things on a micro level. There are strange things going on with the Dali guy's face. The Stable Diffusion guy has 6 fingers on his hand. So there are all kinds of problems. So the learning outcome here for students is that this is what the technology can do, but like with any AI, you really need to work with your prompts. The first time you put something in, it's probably not going to give you what you want. You have to get used to being patient with your prompts, refining them. And so I would get students to sort of work in their groups and refine these, and for it to become iterative. It's great for language teaching because it exposes them to a kind of language that we don't often use in academic teaching. So these image generators really respond well to adjectives and emotive language in a way that these are things that we don't often think about in academic writing. So some examples of things that I ask students to do now. So I kind of teach these, one of the courses that I teach an academic writing course that gets students to try and liven up their writing. Academic writing is very hard. It can be very dry. So I try and get them to use conceptual metaphor in their writing as a way of sort of packing a lot of imagery into a short amount of space. So for a politics essay that students were writing, social media platforms have become an arena for information warfare. So we've got that, information as war metaphor, and this is what I think this was Midjourney, and it came up with, the amalgamation of the corporate guy again. Sorry, everyone, you need a bit more gender balance in these images, but and the tech and the destroyed background and everything. This was one that I asked students to do. So a student had written quite a nice metaphor, I thought, in their essay. This was an economics essay. The British economy has long since harbored many small and privately owned businesses. So that harbor there is quite a nice choice of verb, because you pack a lot of imagery into that harbor. So we've got the image here representing small to medium-sized enterprises as boats. The UK economy is the sort of the calm waters of the harbour, and we've got the backdrop of the buildings and the lights, so it gives that impression of safety and serenity. And in the background, I asked the image generator to put stormy sea, so we can see dark clouds and rain in the background. So it's that idea of shelter and security for businesses. So that's sort of just this way of bringing these abstract concepts to life a little bit. and in ways that we couldn't do before. Right, this was an idea that I borrowed from a talk that I went to recently, which is on YouTube, and I've linked to in my resources. I'll get to at the end. The University of York is running a series of talks about just AI awareness, and a guy called David Caswell gave this particular talk, and he suggested using making students present their work in the form of graphic novels, for example, as an alternative to traditional text-based essays. So you can use AI to be creative and represent your work in different forms of media. So this was students had to go away and research the effects of heat waves and climate change on various parts of the world. And this was one of the finished products he used. So he was working with prompts to get these images very consistent and keep the style there is very the same, very similar. So this is an example of kind of getting to grips with the technology and learning how to control the AI and make it produce the things that you want. So just a final point. You might be thinking at the moment, right? Okay, I'm just struggling as to how I would use this in my own teaching context. So if you like the idea of working with images but are a bit unsure as to where to start, ChatGPT can help. So I've found that one of the best uses for ChatGPT in teaching, as I've come to use it, is as a brainstorming partner. So I'm kind of leaning towards the idea now that it's much more something that I work with than is replacing teachers or time. So I would ask Chat, I'm interested in conceptual metaphor. I want to bring images into how I teach this. So my prompt was, give me 10 conceptual metaphors that could be used to make academic writing more engaging. So it gives me my examples. I'll just give you a second to read through some of those. These are fairly common metaphors that we use to talk about concepts that we can't touch or see in academic writing. So there's some example sentences there. Anyway, that's because I'm a language teacher, that's from my context. I mean, hopefully you could ask ChatGPT to suggest you ways in which you can support your work with images similarly. So that what I then did was said, great, thank you. I was mercilessly ridiculed for being polite to ChatGPT. So I do say please and thank you with ChatGPT because, you know, if they're going to take over the world one day, then I've laid some groundwork. So please reframe these as prompts for image generators. So it does a good job of taking the abstract concepts that I'm trying to teach and putting them into prompts that are readable by image generators like Stable Diffusion and Midjourney. So these then I would paste into the prompt box and then go on to refine them. So just some suggestions. I'm just going to close off now and then I'll point you to the resources so you can have a go for yourselves. I think if you're going to take this into the classroom, my suggestions are find a point where you know, a consolidation or review section is useful. So this might be halfway through your course if you have consolidation weeks or tutorial weeks, and just get the students in for a bit of a workshop. Have them generate their own images based on things that you've been teaching. This could be a language course, it could be biology, chemistry, whatever it is. Maybe it's you deal a lot with abstract concepts in your scheme of work, and you'd like them to just kind of linger on these concepts for a minute and revisit them through generating visuals. You could also create a storyboard if you deal with something that, you know, where you're teaching processes, perhaps you're teaching a more practical subject. You could get students to, you know, visualize a process in a series of images like the ones I looked at earlier and share the results in the group. So make it a collaborative exercise and let students work together, see what they've produced and get them to kind of reverse engineer what it is that they've done and see if they've successfully visualized things in a way that other people can recognize and understand.